Perfect. Okay, hello and welcome everybody to the panel discussion about remote work and onboarding in IT. The discussion takes place in the framework of Erasmus Plus and is part of the IT Onboard project. Baumgartner will introduce the project in a minute. The topic of the discussion is remote work in IT viewed from different angles, like lawful aspects, social questions, and experiences from people doing remote work in real life on a daily basis. Employer and employee point of view. Thank you for the participants to provide their time today. And before we're going into detail, I want to ask you about a short introduction on your own and what you're doing. May I start with you?
Okay, my name is Domenico Rief. I'm working here in Innsbruck at the Chamber of Labour, and we're in a legal representative organization of employees in Austria, and there I'm also competent for European law and transport situations in the working context. So, in the context of remote work, for example, if the employer and the employee are working and situated in two different states within the EU, what is this consequence for social law, for labor law, for tax law, and those questions are around.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Eric Andrei. I am currently working for a company in Germany called Kitconcept, and I also have my company back in Brazil called Simples Consultoria, so I know both sides, and I'm the Plum Foundation president.
Thank you.
Hello, I am Alessandro Pisa. I have a background in physics and I came to work as a software developer for a company in Munich, and I work remotely for them since 2016. And I hope I will tell you all the aspects of working remotely since such a long time, also from the pre-COVID era.
Thank you very much.
Mein Name ist Sybille Regensberger. Ich bin vom Brotberuf Bilanzbuchhalterin, Lohnverrechnerin mit einem eigenen Lohnverrechnungsbüro in Innsbruck mit 4 Mitarbeitern, kenne also das aus meinem täglichen Geschäft und bin gleichzeitig in der Wirtschaftskammer die Fachgruppenobfrau der Fachgruppe UBIT, wo die Unternehmensberater, Bilanzbuchhalter und ITler vereinigt sind. Da sprechen wir von 4.400 Mitgliedern, allein in Tirol, 2.000 davon sind ITler.
Vielen Dank.
My name is Bernd Gössling. I'm Professor for Business Education with focus on back-to research for research on vocational education and training here at the University of Innsbruck. And I also had the opportunity to be part of the board trying to support and accompany the project called ITONBOARD, and I'm looking forward to our discussion here.
Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Baumgartner. I'm from Austria, I'm from Innsbruck, and I'm IT project manager with Chairwoman partner. I'm the partner, and we also one of the partners from ITONBOARD. There were 5 partners from Spain, Italy, Austria, and Germany. And I was the project manager of the intellectual output of the Erasmus Plus ITONBOARD project of the guidelines for blended internship.
Okay, can you tell us a little bit about the project? What you did, what were the achievements and the goals, and can we have a look at some outcome maybe? Is there something in public?
Outcome is there.
Okay, thank you. And
You can see it on their website called ITONBOARD.de. And ITONBOARD is an Erasmus Plus project for vocational orientation in IT focus of web development, focus of open source. So we created a couple of tools for career orientation for students, for teachers, and for companies. For example, we created an online interest test for students so they can check if they are suitable working in IT. We created an escape game for schools so students can play a game and learn playfully how to work in IT. For example, there is a hint in the code and I have to find it. So we have also online courses with videos on, about the jobs in IT and a multiple choice test. But the most important vocational orientation are internship. Therefore we have an internship exchange for companies looking for young talents and also for interns for internship. And when we have been the last time at the Pro conference in Ferrara, we had a big discussion about internship. And we realized that some companies are unsure to hire interns. They need a guide, they need advice. So we created a guideline about internship for companies. And it's a special feature because we write an internship for remote working companies. We collected best practice exercises and examples for remote work. We collected exercises from education and e-learning and put it together in this guideline. And when we started with our research, there have been some companies working remote. But meanwhile, during the pandemic, it grew up. You hear, we are working remote, we don't need any office. And if you ask the audience here, who are working in IT, you will realize there are a lot of people who are working remote now. And so, on my own opinion, onboarding in IT means also onboarding in remote work.
Okay, thank you very much. Luckily, we have really experienced guys from all over the world here today. And I think maybe it's a good idea to start with the opportunities and risks of remote work. And I want to ask Mr. Errico André to start with some aspects from the employer's point of view. What is important if you want to start with remote workers? What is your experiences with it?
Okay, I would say the first important thing is access to a larger talent pool than you would have if you have people just around you, right? And this makes an opportunity, gives you an opportunity to have a better team fit, get the right people you need for the right positions and so on and so forth. But on the other hand, it's not easy. You have cultural aspects that you need to deal with. You have, not everyone is ready for remote work. There are people that need to be in an office to work with other human beings in order to produce. It adds a lot to the management of this. And one point that the other moment we were discussing is about communication. Communication is key. You need to be able to adapt your communication style to the team you have. If you have only team members that speak the same language and so on and so forth, it's easier the moment you start opening this and you have people from different countries, different time zones, different languages. Most of the time you're not speaking on your native language, so you need to learn how to accommodate that. And companies do not impose culture. Culture kind of grows within the company according to how things work, right? It means that my company is a remote first company. What does it mean? It means that I need to make sure communication works. I'm able to do onboarding. I'm able to overcome cultural differences, and then the culture is going to arise in there. It's not because I wrote on paper or put on my website that this happens like this. And not every employee is going to be perfect fit for that company and so on and so forth.
So you're suggesting some kind of roadmap and guideline what needs to be done before entering all the domain?
Exactly, guidelines for sure. This is one, but remembering there's no recipe that is better than understanding the team members you have. If you have team members with different cultural aspects, you will need to accommodate to that. You will need to understand. One of the challenges we have at Kitconcept at the moment is the fact that we have colleagues on India and we have a colleague in Seattle. So imagine the time zones that we pass. And we found an agreement of, okay, it's impossible to have a meeting with everyone every day. Because someone would have to be late at night or wake up way too early. So we practice async communication. Asynchronous, people leave messages on Slack and so on and so forth. And we have the best possible time for a short meeting, basically to say, okay, this is what's happening. Everyone kind of knows what's going on. For my colleagues in Germany, they call it wrap up. For people in America, we call it stand up, because they go to bed, they keep working, they wake up, ta-da, done. So things work like that.
Okay, so everyone needs to have a concrete plan before starting or thinking about doing it from an administrative and project management and management at all point of view. Let me ask Mr. Pisa, let me ask you from an employee's point of view, what you experience in your daily workplace.
Yeah, let's say that I was not looking to be a remote worker. It just happened. Yeah. The first thing is that at a certain point I needed to have some more time because of family business. And so I was looking for this new thing called smart working, so you can work a little bit from home, a little bit in the office, and that's it. But then, my company was not willing to let me do so, so I needed to find another company. And what happened is that I come from a small city, which is Ferrara, and there are not that many companies that could profit for my expertise. So at the end, I decided to look somewhere else, and my intention, of course, was not the one of moving abroad for working. And luckily, I found the opportunity in many other companies, and then I picked I had the privilege of choosing a company that is now based in Munich. And since 2016, I'm active to work with them. And Syslab, yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, and the company was already prepared to have a remote worker. In fact, they already had a guy working from Scotland at the time. And so it was kind of natural. Also because we regularly held some cooperation with some other companies. So we were sprinting together, we were working together on projects with companies from different countries. So we were kind of, I was already kind of used to work in cooperation with people that are not in my city. That was episodic at the time, but then it became a regular thing. And of course, things changed. Also because I am kind of Latin, I'm Italian, so I really like to socialize with people. And being a remote worker is not that easy. So
I really enjoy the times that I can have some company retreat. And we had some in the pre-pandemic era, but then during the pandemic there was no chance to do that anyway. So at the end, I can confirm everything that Enrico said. Communication is one of the most important things in making remote work effective. Also, one other thing that I would like to stress out is that whenever you work remotely, and if you are alone all day, you have the tendency to forget that you work for a company, so you might go for your own solution that you think are good for you, but not for the company. And many times it is a good thing that to confront with the others, and it is important that everybody in a company that as remote workers make clear that the time spent together working on the same thing on pairing session is time well spent, because pairing on a project is something which is more costly for a company, because you have two people working on the same thing, one watching what the other does and the other feeling watched, and that's not beautiful. But many times that helps people understand each other's point of views, find better solutions, and also go straighter to the point.
So, thank you very much. So we hear there is a lot of communication skills required to even do high quality remote work, and there is probably a lot of things to learn during the implementation. Frau Magister Regensberger, Ms. Regensberger, what are the tax aspects, die Steueraspekte? Was muss eine Firma beachten, wenn sie mit Remote Work anfangen will? Was sind die Schwierigkeiten?
Wie lange habe ich Zeit?
Bis Sie aufhören oder bis es so lange dauert?
Kürzen wir es ab. Die Wirtschaft braucht diese Dinge. Die sind natürlich in der Pandemie groß geworden. Man sieht, wie Sie die Vorredner schon gesagt haben, die guten Dinge und die schlechten Seiten. Es hat alles so seine positiven und negativen Seiten. Wir in Österreich haben eine sehr hohe Gesetzgebung, und diese liegt in meinen Dingen, in meinen Ansichten, was das Remote Working anbelangt, sehr nach. Ich habe ein Lohnverrechnungsbüro, es kommen immer wieder die Fragen, wenn jetzt die Freundin in Amsterdam für ein halbes Jahr ist, kann mein Mitarbeiter dorthin? Ja, können tut er schon, aber ich kann ihn nicht mehr in Österreich versichern. Also das sind alles solche, es geht vor allem weniger die steuertechnischen Dinge, würde ich sagen, sondern wenn ich das Arbeitsverhältnis sehe, dann sind es vor allem sozialversicherungsrechtliche Aspekte und arbeitsrechtliche Aspekte. Man sagt, ich kann arbeiten, wann ich will. Ja, wir haben eine Arbeitszeit von 8 Stunden. Es gibt Überstundenregelungen, die ab 19 Uhr anfangen. Da fangen viele von Ihnen an zu arbeiten. Also, das sind Dinge, die der Arbeitgeber, wenn er es richtig machen will, und auch der Arbeitnehmer berücksichtigen muss. Und hier glaube ich, dass wir noch eine weite Strecke haben, dass die gesetzlichen Regelungen richtig laufen, dass auch beide Partner, Arbeitgeber und Arbeitnehmer, das bekommen und finden, was sie brauchen. Das größte Problem im Moment sehe ich darin, dass ja die Sozialversicherung eigentlich nicht läuft. Ich habe selber 2 Söhne, Und einer hat festgestellt im Sommer, ja, nein, er ist angestellt, er macht jetzt 4 Monate in Frankreich, Remote Work, ne? Firma war okay. Sag jetzt, bist du wahnsinnig? Vom Prinzip bist du nicht mehr richtig versichert, weil die Firma müsste sich ja, entweder wird entsendet, aber das ist ja keine Betriebsstätte, oder es gibt überhaupt Mitarbeiter, die in Amsterdam wohnen, da muss ich dort eine Lohnverrechnung vor Ort machen lassen, wenn ich es richtig mache. Ich mache zum Beispiel Lohnverrechnung für Firmen, deutsche Firmen, die im Homeoffice hier in Österreich, in Innsbruck Mitarbeiter beschäftigen. Der muss mich persönlich bezahlen. Klar, die Lohnverrechnung muss hier gemacht werden. Es muss Steuer- und Sozialversicherung an österreichische Ämter abgeführt werden. Das ist alles ein Riesenaufwand, weil wenn dann der Mitarbeiter hier Skifahren geht, wenn wir schönes Wetter, und einen Unfall hat, dann geht er ins Krankenhaus und dann heißt es, bitte, wir brauchen ein E-Card. Und das sind so die Dinge. Der Herr hier sitzt in Ferrara. Probieren Sie einmal, wenn Sie nicht in Italien versichert sind, in Italien zu einem Arzt zu gehen, weil Sie dort für 6 Monate arbeiten, weil es so schön dort unten ist, und Sie haben einen Unfall mit einem Fahrrad und Sie möchten jetzt dort ganz normal ins Krankenhaus auf Versicherungskarte gehen. Das sind eigentlich aus meiner Sicht, abgesehen von gewissen Aspekten, dass nicht jede Firma und auch nicht jede Arbeit im Remote gemacht werden kann, die Herausforderung, die wir in nächster Zeit lösen müssen, weil das Remote wird immer stärker werden. Ich bin selber Frau, ich habe eine Mitarbeiterin, die hat 2 kleine Kinder, die möchte immer wieder im Homeoffice arbeiten. Jetzt sprechen wir einmal von Remote und einmal von Homeoffice. Es ist einmal schon das, arbeitsrechtlich anders geregelt, aber wie gesagt, ich habe begrenzte Zeit. Natürlich sagt die, wenn der kleine Skikurs geht, ich möchte zu Hause bleiben, weil dann geht es leichter. Ist für mich jetzt kein Problem, aber die Dame an der Kasse kann das nicht. Und genau diese Dinge, es ist die IT sicher prädestiniert. Wir Buchhalter vielleicht auch noch, auch wenn man uns immer wieder erklärt, dass das in Zukunft sowieso die KI macht. Aber gewisse Dinge gehen nicht. Und vor allem, um nochmal zurückzukommen, es ist eigentlich der rechtliche Aspekt, der im Moment im Graubereich ist. Es funktioniert noch alles, aber wenn die ersten Prozesse kommen oder Streitereien, dann werden wir sehen, ob diese Regelungen, die wir jetzt haben, halten. Ich glaube nicht.
Dankeschön, thank you. So you're actually saying that every company which I think it's similar in all over Europe, how the legal situation is. And so what you're basically saying is that companies who are doing remote work with their employees actually have illegal in one way or another, because there is no regulation how to deal with all those time tracking on the working hours and overtime and carryover time and all these things. What's the point from the Chamber of Labor to these questions?
Okay, starting with the first comment on my right side. Yes, as an employee, the same as the employer. You have a bigger labor market as an employer. You have a bigger employer market as an employee. That's a good point of remote work. But at the same time, you have a labor market and you have to compete with persons from all over the world, so you have much more competition. You have competition with people with lower income, lower costs in their social field, in their home countries, and therefore it's also more difficult to get the income you need to live here in Austria, for example, as we have very high costs of living costs, compared to, for example, with India or wherever you can find other remote workers which compete with you for the same job and at the same company. So we have on the one side positive view, but also negative view, viewing from a high for a high-income country like Austria. On the other side, another negative thing is the remote worker are more output oriented. That means the orientation is that at the end the output must be here. If you're an employee, normally you just have to work during your working time. Yes, you should bring an output, but the output orientation is higher for the self-employed persons, not for the employed person. And if you work remote, as the working time is harder to control, employers tend to be more output orientated, which means that employees, if they are slower in working, they tend to work more and to exploit themselves more than working in an office. Because working in an office, you can say, okay, now my time is over, I go home. Being at home and being more output orientated, you tend to stay longer, to work longer during the night, longer time, longer periods, and not to hold this maximum working hours, which are laid down in the national labor laws. This is also part of this trust-based working hours, as it's hard to control. Often they agree there's agreement between employers and employees that you have trust-based working hours and not real working hours. You don't have to work 40 hours if you're fast, you can work less. If you're slow, you have to work a little longer. And therefore, employees, from the point of an employee representation, they sometimes need to be protected from or against themselves. So the exploitation risk is here, and especially if you have a working organization within the company, like works councils, they have difficulties to protect and also to represent their own colleagues, as they don't meet each other. It's much more difficult to organize something within the company if the employees are working all over the world, all over Europe, and even in the same country. If they work at home 5 days a week, it's hard for a works council to communicate and to organize something together. The work-life blending is also such a thing where on the hand side you can say, okay, you have a better compatibility between family and working time. As you're at home, you can look after your child if it's here, but at the same time you can work. And you don't have to do long distances and spend time in in buses or trains or in the car, going to the working place. You can stay at home, you can start working just after finishing your breakfast, for example. That's the positive side of you. But the negative one is that the borders between private time and working time, they're not clear borders anymore. So you don't leave the office and say, okay, now I'm free, but there's always some in a mix between being at home, so in your free ambience or free time ambience, and on the other side, in your office at the same time. And this has also some risks. Also the risk being always being reachable by the employer, by phone or by other mobile devices. You always look at your emails. Oh, did I get an email? Maybe it's 10 p.m. in the night. So there's no strict way to separate working life from private life. This might stress persons. On the other side, it depends on the person. If it's a stressful factor, or if it's a factor that you say, okay, it's an advantage for me. To say something about the complicated situation in the legal sense.
Excuse me, may I hook in to the points where you compared the remote work with a regular employment? Because I think we have heard about two kinds of remote work. The one is the employee who is searching for a chance, who is searching for an opportunity and who wants to do this, And the other part is the one who got forced, maybe due to the pandemic or something like this. So I think we have both on this side. Is there some kind of scientific view on this topic? May you tell us some words to this, please?
I can, but can you just repeat the question once more? I'm not sure if I got it.
Okay, we were talking about, or you were talking about two different kinds of remote workers. The one who were forced to work remotely due to the pandemic, and the others are the one who want to do it, which are two different kinds of view and cause two different kinds of problems.
Okay, I think I can say something about it. There could be many things.
May you use the microphone, please?
I think there could be many things said about it. The thing that I find interesting is to see that the very same work, the very same remote work, can be a high quality or good work for some, and the very same work is a bad or problematic work for others. And part of the problem maybe is that working remotely also means to organize oneself, to get oneself up, to see how to deal maybe the overwhelming family work and how to manage and align that with the work responsibilities. And some people do that well, and others get maybe even depressed over it because they see, well, I'm actually in a trap here, and I don't really motivate myself any longer, and I cannot work, and I see my bad work results, and that makes me even more unmotivated. And someone else may be able to be in the same situation with the same obligations and has a higher level of self-management skills, is maybe more professional with his work or her work, and the very same person can get in a flow and sees, well, I have the flexibility, I own that flexibility, I fulfill my family duties and my work duties, and I can even work harder and accomplish more. And that would then be maybe a flow experience. Maybe it's someone who was forced into remote work, or it was someone who worked there voluntarily. It can be either case. I think it has to do with the skills level of the people in remote work. But even the case of those who are on a flow experience, so to say, in their work, maybe even this situation can have two different sides. The one side is, well, I'm in a flow, great. I put my creativity at work, I work with those that I like, I have the flexibility to do that, everything's great. The other part is that I monitorize more of my life, because I don't just monitorize my manpower and my ability to work, I also monitorize my creativity, my ideas, my character, my ability to connect to others, and that can be okay. And maybe that's also one of the benefits of employers. If they have motivated remote workers, they're good off, and if those who monitorize their skills are good off, it's fine. But I would just raise the question whether we really want that. So how much of my life do I want to give to the remote work, and how much do I want to spare for other responsibilities in my life?
Okay, thank you. So this, I think this are interesting aspects for one and the same thing, and the points you are giving us are the point. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the Chamber of Labor handles the cases where somebody is not very happy with the situation more than when people are happy with the situation.
Sure. Persons who are coming to us to ask for demands, they normally are not so happy in the situation, but we also look at the...
Or face real problems too.
They face real problems, or they just need some advice in tax law and social security law, how to manage the situation the best. As a lot of employers do not really know, and also, sorry, but a lot of if they just used to handle a situation within a country like in Austria, they do not really know how to handle a situation through remote work and the connection between two different legal systems. The European law it's not Austrian, it's not an Austrian law. Problems, the social security is regulated in the European law. And it's not so difficult as you told us, as employers can, especially in Austria. If you work in Austria for a foreign European for a European employer, you're free to pay your social security contributions to the social insurance if the employer pays you directly your gross salary and the employer part of the social security contributions. And you don't even need a Steuerberater, the real word, accountant, thank you. You don't really need an accountant, as the social security in Austria calculates for you the amount of contributions you have to pay based on your gross salary. And this works quite easy, and there exists a form within the whole EU that allows you to do it on your own, and the employer has not a lot to do, just to pay your gross plus the employer contributions. So also on the tax point of view, if you're just working and living in Austria, you pay everything in Austria. It's much more complicated if you're a frontier worker, and a lot of frontier workers who live in one country and work in the other one, with the pandemic, with Corona, started to work or just in home office or some days in home. And the problem is, if you start to change and you work 3 days at home and 2 days in the office, then it's getting complicated. Then it's getting complicated for the tax, as you have to pay taxes in 2 states. One part is to be paid by the employer, the other part is to be paid by yourself. But the social security is always to be paid in one country. And with Germany, we have even enacted a very recent agreement that if you work up to 40% in your home country, you can pay your social security contributions in the country of the employer. So the employer can do as he did every time, and he pays with the normal contributions at the country of the employer. If you work more than 40% in the home country, then you have to do it on your own, as you pay, as if you work 100% in your home country. So you pay the social contributions in your home country to the home social security. So this works quite good in the cases we handle it, and it's not as complicated as many employers think it is.
Okay, thank you. Frau Magister Regensberger, vielleicht hierzu noch eine Frage, und zwar speziell, wenn es um Anstellung versus Selbstständigkeit geht. Können Sie uns hier vielleicht über Probleme berichten, wo bei Prüfungen, zum Beispiel bei Arbeitgebern, dann gesagt wird, das ist jetzt eine Scheinselbstständigkeit, weil aus einfachheitshalber Gründen auf Rechnungsbasis gearbeitet wird?
Ja. Das ist einmal in Österreich sehr klar geregelt. Wenn jetzt Selbstständige, also nehmen wir mal an, ein IT-Unternehmer, ein Projekt abwickelt oder Arbeiten abwickelt für eine andere Firma, er bekommt dafür einen Schlüssel, hat dort einen Schreibtisch, weil er dort arbeitet, geht ein und aus, vielleicht noch zu gewissen Bürozeiten, die ihm vorgegeben sind, und hat sonst keine anderen. Ich mache es jetzt einmal ganz einfach, der Herr Kollege wird wahrscheinlich wieder was finden, aber machen wir es einmal einfach, so wie es der Mitarbeiter eigentlich haben will. Sagt, ich habe einen Auftrag, ich erledige das so, habe in der Zeit keinen anderen Auftraggeber, mache das vielleicht 5-6 Monate und danach habe ich den nächsten Auftraggeber, dann passiert Ihnen, ich schaue Sie einfach jetzt an, ja, als selbstständiger Unternehmer nichts bei einer Prüfung des Auftraggebers, weil der Auftraggeber hat das Problem, dass Sie dann von der Sozialversicherung nach einem gewissen Prüfschema dann als Scheinselbstständiger eingestuft werden. Das heißt, Ihr Honorar ist dann Ihr Nettobezug, auf den dann die Firma die Abgaben bezahlen muss. So war es ja eigentlich nicht ausgemacht und verlangt. Und das ist natürlich für die Auftraggeber ein großes Thema. Daher haben gerade Selbstständige, die einen Auftraggeber haben oder keine Firmenstruktur, ein Problem, solche Aufträge zu bekommen. Und da wird man von größeren Firmen immer darauf aufpassen, dass man die anstellt, damit man dann bei einer sogenannten Prüfung durch die Gebietskrankenkasse oder durch die Finanzbehörden nicht alles umgestuft wird und dann kostet natürlich jetzt, sagen wir mal, das Projekt nicht mehr 100.000, sondern 200.000. Und genau das sind die Themen, die man vorab abklären müsste. Ist natürlich sehr schwierig, weil wie soll der Auftraggeber wissen, ob sie noch andere Auftraggeber haben? Man kann natürlich schon gewisse Dinge einführen und sagen, du musst von zu Hause aus arbeiten, aber trotzdem, auch das ist sehr schwierig handelbar im Zuge der Prüfung. Und daher einfach aus Erfahrung das Problem, dass das große Firmen mit kleinen Unternehmen dann nicht machen. Und dasselbe ist auch, es stimmt, dass der Mitarbeiter das alles selber abführen kann und einfach sein Geld hinkriegt, aber welcher Mitarbeiter will das machen? Mitarbeiter wollen ihr Gehalt bekommen, wissen, dass sie am Monatsende so viel haben oder pro Stunde so viel bezahlt bekommen und wollen die ganze Bürokratie nicht drumherum handeln. Und das ist eigentlich, wenn ich jetzt zurückkomme auf Remote, das Problem, dass der Mitarbeiter ja eigentlich kein Unternehmer sein will, sondern Mitarbeiter und für seine Tätigkeit bezahlt werden will. Und wenn er selbstständig wird, sich selbstständig macht, was ja sehr oft auch passiert, dass man sagt, es wäre eben einfacher, man hat mit den Stunden nicht so das Thema und ich kann dann auch am Wochenende arbeiten, dann habe ich da auch kein Problem. Dann habe ich das nächste Problem mit dieser Scheinselbstständigkeit, wobei man ehrlicherweise sagen muss, die Scheinselbstständigkeit kam ja nicht aus dieser Problematik, sondern die kam aus dem Baugewerbe.
Okay, vielen Dank. Okay, let's go to the next topic, and it's about education and onboarding. Oh, you want something to say? Please.
I have both sides. Okay. So yeah, I feel compelled to put something. First of all, competition. It's high cost of living. I know. I live in São Paulo. That makes most cities in Europe seem like very cheap. And competing, goes both ways. Of course, we could say Norway. Norway is the extreme, but competition is always a problem. It's always harder to compete with someone that is as good as you and makes a third of what you make. So that's real deal. But there's the other way, right? That's the colonial way. You basically force out brain drain. You start picking people from the country, move them to another place, and ta-da, problem solved. Because now they pay taxes in here, so they are family and so on. I'm saying that because we have a real problem related to bureaucracy. Every single legal system around the world, every single social security system, every single tax system was built considering people live in my country, they work in my country, they go to the office, and that needs to change because the world is changing. Unless we go back to the time when, I'm not accessing Facebook, Amazon does not exist and so on, we will need to change. The problem of remote work does not only cross borders. Coming from Brazil, we had a problem between cities because in there, São Paulo is basically the biggest city in Brazil, big economy and so on and so forth, so the city hall asked for more taxes. What happened? The biggest banks in Brazil moved their headquarters without any human being to a nearby city. And then we need to change the tax system and so on and so forth. In the end,
This sounds a little bit like Switzerland.
Ireland and the Netherlands. The whole import from place one to yes.
Delaware is the same.
Okay.
Exactly. But just finish. The whole point is everything comes down to a point that we now have communication systems. And we are now able to be in a different place than where we are physically located. The side effect is there's competition, everyone is lost in bureaucracy, and there are people exploiting the system. There's a friend of ours that used to say that lowest kind of human being he knows right now is the digital nomad. It's someone that probably from a place in Europe, working for a European country, for a European company, living in some third world country, amazing beach and so on, not paying taxes there, not paying taxes here, exploiting both places at the same time. So we need to find a solution for this kind of stuff, right?
Okay, thank you. Asking especially Mrs. Regensberger and Dr. Rief, is there from the interest representations from the chambers, is there what discussion happens in politics right now about these problems? Does the discussion happen, and in which direction is it heading?
There's no discussion on the European level or on an international level. There was a discussion with Corona on the national level, so we changed our tax law, so the possibilities to get some extra money back from the state if you have a home office, if you have to buy an office chair, or a desk, or a table lamp, or something like this. So on the tax side, within Austria, they changed a little bit, so you get some extra money for every day in home office. So yeah, a little bit. So, €3 a day for a maximum of 100 days. So you can claim some things with the taxes. On the labor law side, they changed also the laws in Austria, so they introduced some rules and more rules. There existed only a few rules before how to deal with home office, especially home office in Austria. So also the liability law, if you destroy the laptop of your employer, what happens if your husband does this, or if your cat, or if your children. So if you are at home, you're not only the one so dealing with the mobile devices of your employer, so also your family members too. So this liability, they changed the law that if family members who live there do not destroy these things on purpose, but it can happen. So you have the same protection as you do if you would be in the office and destroy their something from you. So they changed the law within Austria, so the Austrian labor law, the Austrian tax law, but not, and there's no discussion on the European level. There is a little bit of discussion between countries, between Austria and Germany, for example, as I told you before. There's a new agreement which goes beyond the European law, where you have just 25% limit when you have to change the social security system. But otherwise, I cannot see any discussion on this European.
Okay, thank you. Frau Magister Regensberger, ich probiere hier andocken. Wenn Sie jetzt einen Brief ans Christkind schreiben dürften, was wäre Ihrer Meinung nach notwendig, um die größten Probleme, die Eriko angesprochen hat und die offensichtlich tatsächlich ein Problem sind, um die anzugehen?
Nachdem Sie mich jetzt als Vertreterin der Interessensvertreterin angesprochen haben, so wie der Kollege auch, wir wissen alle, dass im Moment, man sagt zwar immer Fachkräftemangel, es ist einfach ein Dienstnehmermangel da, der auch dem geschuldet ist, dass der Bildknick vorbei ist und wir einfach zu wenig Mitarbeiter haben in Zukunft, weil einfach weniger Bevölkerung da ist. Und das ist kein österreichisches Problem, das ist ein internationales Problem. Und in der Wirtschaftskammer macht man sich schon Gedanken, wie man dem Ganzen natürlich für die Betriebe und für die Volkswirtschaft helfen kann. Da wäre natürlich das Remote Working und jetzt kein Homeoffice, Remote Working, das heißt, ich bin woanders, wo nicht meine Company oder meine Firma da ist. Das wäre gerade in gewissen Bereichen sehr interessant. Wie wir schon vorher gehört haben, und jetzt kommt der Brief ans Christkind, hat das sehr große Probleme oder birgt das sehr große Probleme, dass natürlich wir es ja noch nicht einmal in Europa geschafft haben, ein internationales Steuersystem aufzubringen. Jetzt reden wir um Google und so weiter, weil wir vorher Ireland gesagt haben. Und jetzt wollen wir, sind es 3 Jahre her, Pandemie, dass das funktioniert. Auch das wird noch nicht funktionieren. Ich glaube, man müsste mal über den Tellerrand hinausschauen. Es kann nicht das kleine Österreich das regeln, es kann auch nicht das größere Deutschland das regeln. Man müsste sich zusammensetzen und sagen, wie kann ich das international regeln, dass eine Firma auch in Indien Mitarbeiter rekrutieren kann. Und von mir aus sage ich jetzt, er muss nicht unbedingt den indischen Lohn bekommen, er kann ja eine bessere Versicherung haben, damit hat er mehr Sicherheit für seine Familie, dass nicht jeder von einem anderen Staat nach Österreich oder auch umgekehrt wandern möchte, weil er dort sein familiäres Umfeld hat, das verstehe ich. Natürlich hätte ich auch als Firma die Möglichkeit, mir dort eine Zweigniederlassung zu gründen, nur das wird alles so kompliziert. Da braucht es einen richtigen gesetzlichen Wurf. Und ich glaube, da ist das Christkind überfordert, wenn ich real denke. Zumindest in der nächsten Zeit. Weil auch die Dinge, die von der Arbeiterkammerseite an gesagt wurden, ja, was tue ich mit 300 € Homeoffice-Pauschale? Das ist ganz nett, aber und auch das ergonomische Werkzeug und diese Regelungen, dass wenn der Laptop zu Hause runterfällt oder mein Hund den im Müll schmeißt oder was weiß ich was über den Balkon runterschmeißt, das sind eigentlich Peanuts, wenn man die Problematik im Gesamten sieht. Die Problematik ist, wir haben sehr viele Aufträge oder Arbeit, die im Moment nicht vollkommen abgedeckt werden kann, weil die Mitarbeiter fehlen. Die Mitarbeiter wären vielleicht in anderen Ländern zur Verfügung, möchten aber sich nicht transferieren, weil sie dort ihre Familie haben. Und das muss irgendwie gelöst werden, dass es dem Mitarbeiter gut geht und auch der Firma gut geht. Denn, wie hier schon gesagt wurde, ich unterschreibe das vollkommen, den Mitarbeitern muss es gut gehen, die müssen sich wohlfühlen in der Firma, es ist auch nicht jeder dafür bereit oder auch nicht, kann ich das machen, aber nur wenn ich Mitarbeiter habe, die sich wohlfühlen, dann leisten sie auch. Und in diesem Kontext müssen wir sicher gemeinsam daran arbeiten, dass entsprechende gesetzliche Rahmenwerk nicht nur in Österreich, sondern international aufgestellt wird. Und das ist in meinen Augen die Krux an der Geschichte, weil da müssen sich alle zusammensetzen. Und das haben wir ja bei anderen Dingen noch nicht geschafft.
Dankeschön, thank you. We slowly running out of time. It's quite interesting. Actually, from the university point of view, is there something to add from your side, Mr. Gössling?
Since we're a little bit running out of time, I have just 2 questions that I've prepared and that maybe are relevant for all of us. The first one is maybe also an ongoing question: how do we want to work remotely? And the second one is, what do we want to do remotely and what do we want to do in person? And for example, I guess there are some things that we, after this panel discussion, would like to do in person that we otherwise would not do remotely.
Thank you very much. Ms. Baumgartner, do you want something? Do you have something to add? Something from what you encountered, what you from all these interesting points?
Yes, I think
Please use the microphone.
I think we see that the remote work is growing and growing. It has been under a cloud before the pandemic, and I think we have all to react it. If you want it or if you don't want it, it's not the question. It's there, and we have to react to it. Remote work needs other rules, different rules, but remote work needs rules.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from the audience? Please.
So I'm working for a Dutch company, and my colleague also in the room moved to Belgium 3 years ago. I can confirm everything. So what you heard now, and especially I know it's on Germany and Austria, between the Netherlands and Belgium, it's indeed the same. We speak the same language, and I see all the what you say, like indeed the insurance things. My colleague starting the pandemic, he moved to Belgium. You live 2 days or 3 days, and then our government start fighting. Belgium says. I'm saying it as a Dutch guy, Belgians probably say about the Dutch government. The Belgians said, okay, we'll adopt all the European rules, but we'll also stick to our own national rules. So my boss in the Netherlands suddenly has to deal. So we have also a verlonings company in Belgium that now forces us to do all kinds of things. It's total chaos. And you're right as well that it's for the personal things when you move home, when you remote work. You get this competition against yourself, and you lose the benchmarking against your colleagues because you're working from home all the time. So you can't benchmark yourself if you're working too little or too much. What I've heard from this, so you're more focused on Austria and Germany in the Deutschsprachige Raum. It's the same all over Europe. You can confirm it, I think, from Italy, where you also have these interesting things. It's really a European. If you look, and we're talking about outside Europe, no, inside Europe, we can't manage.
Thank you very much. Is there any more input from the audience? Yes, please.
Yeah, just a question about, nobody was talking about Portugal. As far as I know, they have some special laws for remote workers, like you can get, you're from Brazil, so you maybe...
I understand the language. Actually, it's about competition, right? It's important to mention that Portugal has one of the highest, I believe the highest immigration rate from Europe. So someone graduates from college in Portugal, what do? They move. So they had the brain drain. They realized that with remote work, Portugal has a nice weather, good place, it's cheap. They start attracting. Italy is doing that as well. If you move to Italy, not if you're Italian, so sorry. If you move to Italy,
So
you have a huge tax
Portugal.
rebate. Because, you're highly skilled, you're moving to Italy, welcome. This is going to happen all the time from now on until there's some kind of international regulation or clear rules. In South America, my company 10 years ago, we had a remote team. We had team members in Argentina and many places in Brazil. And we suffer with additional problems of, we need to pay people in Argentina. And sending the money from Brazil to Argentina needed to go all the way to New York. Because, we realized it was cheaper for some of us fly to Argentina every month with the money, give to them, and come back. This is the kind of stuff that happened 10 years ago. Now it's easier, but the law, the taxation, and especially social security.
What you are saying is that the problems Ms. Regensberger was facing are solved by competition, not by
regulation. Competition finds ways of breaking the system. It's quite simple. That's how capitalism works. There's the EU, and there's a special rule. Netherlands, another one in Ireland. Ta-da! They found a loophole and they're happy.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or input?
Yeah, so actually as a younger person and who has just started to work in the IT branch here, it's quite interesting to hear this all because like I just realized we are living in a quite global world where we have the internet, we have global transportation systems, like when we want to have bananas, we can get bananas, but what we actually don't have is like global working really. Like we have ways to achieve this, but there are many barriers and we actually don't have like global laws. Like we want to have global politics, but we may not have them, and yeah, I just want to mention this, and this is pretty interesting, like nothing stuff you learn in school.
Thank you very much. We want to invite you for a small snack and 1 or 2 drinks and a lot of hopefully interesting discussions and questions with the audience and with the participants of the discussion. Thank you very much having you here, and thank you for your patience, and we will see you outside. Thank you very much.